Welcome back to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source. I'm Eric Paul. After a week off without anything posted, here's another episode. This is the last one that was recorded a few months ago at the New Hampshire Makers Fair at the Children's Museum of New Hampshire in Dover. And here I talk with a family that chose from my table an 8-track of Simon and Garfunkel's greatest hits to be analyzed on the spot as a primary source of the time period from which it came. I hope you enjoy. All right, we're back, and I am with
Jen
and Mia.
I'm Brian. And we're at the New Hampshire Makers Fest at the New Hampshire Children's Museum in Dover, New Hampshire. And from my table of stuff, it looks like something you'd find on the side of the road, which a lot of this was, antique stores and stuff like that, old yard sales that didn't sell. You plucked out an 8-track tape of Simon and Garfunkel's greatest hits. And I have at home the record version of it, which, like a lot of 8-track tapes, that's what they did, is they took from a previous vinyl record, an LP, and put it onto tape form. And the question that we're talking about today, to try to figure out something about it and what it tells us of the time period it came from, is why did they make it? So they had an existing collection of greatest hits from this folk duo, Simon and Garfunkel. Why do you think they just took it? Why not just leave it on the record? Why put it into this plastic case?
Do you have any guesses?
So the record didn't get destroyed?
In what kind of situation might a record get destroyed that this thing would be safe from?
Scratches and breaking and glass.
Yeah, you're right about that. I know that I grew up buying a lot of CDs, and I can attest to the fact that CDs get ruined really quick, especially when they fall onto a floor that has like pebbles on it or anything at all. It gets scratched, it's ruined. You can't listen to it anymore. And so something like this does keep it safer. It's much more likely. What other situations might a smaller version of in this case a tape, be better suited than a record?
Maybe so you could use it in your car.
Yeah, so you could listen to it in the car. And so we can assume. Now, what do you think? Which came first, the 8-track player in the car, or should the record? Do you think the 8-track was separate from the car, or do you think that it was invented because of the car culture in this country?
I think they started putting them in cars.
So they existed first. I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking that's a good guess, that it was already something. So I bought just a few weeks ago. Actually, I didn't buy it. It was free, as a lot of the stuff was on Facebook Marketplace. But I got a mid-century record player, a stereo system. It looks like a piece of furniture. They wanted it to. And on one side it has a record player. On the other side it's an 8-track cassette player. And so, yeah, it was part of home entertainment as well, but a lot easier to bring into a car. I don't think if you tried to put a record in a car, it would just wobble all over the place and everything like that. So what does that tell you about why put this title onto an 8-track tape if it's so mobile? What does that tell you about Simon and Garfunkel and their music?
So you know what they look like and pretty much how they seem.
Yeah. And do you think they already had existing fans?
Yeah.
And so they probably, I would imagine, this was made also because, again, if you have the record, it's greatest hits. They're not, a collection of duds. Like, these are like their best songs. And you want to take it with you, but you don't have a means to with your record. They must have been a big enough band that they said, yeah, we're going to make this, because it takes some money to make a bunch of these cassette tapes. It's not an easy thing. I always think about it when VHS came out. Right? Anytime any new media shows up, pre-digital stuff, they don't just make any movie and put it onto VHS from like the 30s or the 40s. They start with the ones that were already popular. Like The Wizard of Oz became VHS right away, whereas maybe some, movie that didn't perform so well never made it to VHS. So this must have, we can probably assume, what can we assume about the performance of this when it was in record form?
I think it probably did really well.
And that sold, and I bet it, so my temptation whenever I do this podcast is to do research, and I have to resist that because it kind of defeats the purpose of, figuring things out just as a conversation here. But I bet if I were to look it up, I would probably find that greatest hits record did sell very, very well. And so this also predates the time when people could just make their own tapes. Because I know I did that. Did you do that?
Yes,
the
lots of
mixtape.
that, yes.
Did you ever hold the stereo up to the tape player, and you hear somebody in the background on it? It's all fuzzy and stuff. And the same thing with VHS, because after a while, blank tapes. I don't know if they made blank 8 tracks. I doubt it.
I don't think so. I don't remember. Though
So-
they weren't a big part of my life. But
And I don't think the lifespan of 8 tracks was all that long. Because it wasn't long before the cassette, tape that we're familiar with kind of took over.
right.
For obvious reasons. That thing's kind of clunky, and
Yes.
storage space is not so great. So, but thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
And this is exactly the kind of conversations we have on the EPS podcast, especially the short ones. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that summer short. Listen, if you are anywhere in the greater New Hampshire and Maine Seacoast region, keep your eyes and ears peeled for EPS Podcast live appearances. The first one is coming up on Wednesday, July 27th at Strawberry Bank Museum in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The museum is a historic neighborhood that dates back nearly 400 years, and I'll be there greeting guests and talking about all the different primary sources that we can fit in for the 4 hours I'm there from 11 to 3. I hope to see you there or any other EPS Podcast live events coming soon.